should I choose watercolors in tubes or pans? And this is a question I've been asked many times. So for that reason, I wrote a blog about it. And you can find a link below this video to the blog if you like to read it. But I'm going to go over it in this video as well, just to give you a more visual regarding this subject. So the answer to this question, unfortunately, is not a straight yes or no type of answer. It's not use this or use that. It depends a lot on what you do, how you like to paint, where you like to paint, and so on. So I will try to give you an outline of the differences, pros and cons of each type of watercolor paint. So yeah, you should be able to make an informed choice. So let's start with the sides. Both with the tubes and the pans, we have different sizes. And I have in here, this is a full pan. If you can see it, I haven't taken it out, but it's just double the size of the smaller ones, which are half pans. So that's a full pan, and it takes up 2 spaces. And then we have the half pan, which is this size here. But amongst these sizes, I mean, even if it's half pan, you have, according to the maker of the paint, you have different sizes of the half pan. So slight differences, but let's see if I can show you. This is I wrote what it is, but it's a transparent orange, and this is from Schminke, I think. And here we have a bright violet. I think this is from Olben. And as you can see, they are different. This one is taller, and I think there's a slight difference on the width as well, although it's very slight. And then this is a Winsor & Newton. It's more similar to this one here, but still it's different because the sizes go out more, and it's different compared to this one as well. It's a bit like a couple of millimeters taller, and it's a different shape. So if you have a box that has the fixed compartments, not like this, but you know, the plastic fixed compartments, then you might have trouble fixing, like putting these different sizes all in the same box. This problem has been solved with this type of containers, because this metal part here is movable, so you can make it tighter, or you can move it a little bit, and there's a little bit of room to wiggle the pans in there. So that's for the half pans. And the tubes, generally you find them in 2 sizes. So you have, this is a 14 mil from Winsor & Newton, and this is a 5 mil. So very often these are other makes, but they're both 5 mils as well, although this one looks smaller, but it's 5 and 5. And you can find other sizes as well, such as 21 mil and 15 mil, or even 37 mils. But these 2 sizes are the ones that you find most often. So let's talk about the benefits of having watercolor paint in the pans instead of the tubes. So the first thing that comes to mind is the ease of use if you're painting outside. So you just pick up the box. For example, you can use a smaller one like this and put 12 different paints, and you can even use this part as a palette, like a mixing palette. I got paints all over my fingers. So this is quite easy to use if you're working outside. So instead of having a tube and then you have to squeeze a bit on your palette, and then maybe when you finish, you know, you have paint left and you don't know what to do with it because it's a shame to throw it away, but then at the same time you can't put a wet palette into your bag. So the tubes are more fiddly for that. And also these, they take less space. So there is a 48 colors that go in here. And if you have 48 tubes, it will take much more space than this. They are better for traveling as well. So if you're taking a plane, the pans, the half pans, they are much better, because what happens with the tubes, if you put them in your suitcase in the hold, they're not pressurized, and basically they will accumulate pressure inside. So when you open it after the flight, you would have a little fountain of color coming out straight away, and then you don't know what to do with all that color, because you need just a little bit of watercolor of paint, yeah, if you get all the color coming out all at once, it's a bit of a problem, and I have actually been there, so I know what I'm talking about. Also, there is when you use the pans, you can see some of them are almost empty, and you can actually, with a brush, you can go all the way and get all the paint out. Some of these are almost empty, and but you can still use the entire contents of the pan. While with the tubes, once they start, once you start sort of squeezing them, there will be some paint left inside the tube, and you can open it, of course, but there will always be a little bit of paint in the places hard to reach. So there's a little bit of waste there. And also, let me see if I find a tube for you to show you. Oh yeah, there's a perfect one here. There's sometimes there's wastage in here as well, when the paint for some reason comes out, maybe pressure or other reasons. So that paint is, you can go there with the brush, but usually is wasted. There's another thing that happens with tubes, and is that when you open them for the first time or after a long time, this one I've used, so it doesn't have it, but they might have. So these tubes don't have it, but sometimes when you open them, especially for the first time, they have a liquid inside here. So you start squeezing the paint, and this sort of weird liquid comes out, which is the gamma arabic, that when they stay stored for a long time, they start to separate. So one way to try and avoid wastage with that, because you start squeezing and then all of a sudden a lot of paint comes out, and you sort of wasted a little bit of paint there. You could take a really thick needle or something similar, and you could try and put the needle inside and sort of mix it. It's not easy, but you could try and do that. Or you could squeeze a little bit on an empty pan and then mix it there. But yes, that's another problem with the tubes. And another problem that I don't have yet, but I might do one day, is that the paint might dry inside the tubes. So it will be difficult to get it out once it's dry. It happened to me with gouache, but it can happen with watercolor as well. Some of these tubes are quite old, but maybe if you keep them for years and years, or if the tube gets damaged, gets like punctured, then air goes in and the paint starts to dry. And again, you can sort of open it, break it open and reactivate it with water, but not ideal. So this is a comparison and the benefits of using pans, but there are benefits for using tubes as well. So for example, it is easier to pick up the paint because the paint is nice and soft. Now these pans I've been using, so you can see them shiny, but this one, for example, is a bit more dry, and this one, because I haven't used them. So when you start picking up the paint, you have to sort of go back and forth many times before you get a reasonable amount. So if you're painting something like a landscape, or I don't know, a still life, something that you need a lot of paint, then it will be very annoying to go back and forth from the pan. So the best thing to do is take a tube, squeeze a little bit, and then even with a bigger brush, you can sort of go there and pick up the paint, and you have almost immediately a big pool of paint. One thing you can do with the half pans is to wet them beforehand with something like this. So that's from Derwent, but there's loads of these you can find in art shops, and you can just spray a little bit before you start, like a couple of minutes, and that reactivates the paint, so it's not as hard when you start painting. But again, if you need a lot of paint, then the tubes are the best option. In the tubes, it's actually easier to find out information about the paint, which is very important to know. So at the back here, you have information about if the paint is opaque or transparent, and you have somewhere there's the pigment number, which is too small probably to see on camera. So with the pans, once you have taken the wrapper from the pan, I think I have one here which is gone all sort of a bit weird, but I kept this. But you know how these little pieces of paper tend to go into some place where no one can find them anymore, and so usually, well, I mean, that's the only one I have left from all these that says something. So I mean, sometimes they do put something, especially Winsor & Newton, they put something on the side of the pan, but it's not all the information you need, and then when they are in here, you don't really want to keep picking them up. So the tubes are good for that reason. You can still see everything that is the information about the paint. I also do something else. I mean, if you like to use pans, what you can do, I'm going to show you, is to do something like this. So a color chart. I mean, I would advise you to do a color chart of all your paints anyway, but I write also, let's see, there. I write the name of the paint. I put if it's opaque or transparent or semi-transparent. I write the make if it's not Winsor & Newton, because Winsor & Newtons are the ones that I use most. But then if I have Aubain or Sennelier or something else, I write that as well. So, and I write the pigments, which pigment makes the paint. So I have straight away a way to tell information about that paint, because I use these quite often. I don't use tubes. I usually take a tube and put some paint into the empty pan and use those, because I don't use a lot of paint when I do my paintings. I do mostly botanical painting, so I don't need big pools of paint. It's important to use an old brush when you pick up the paint from your pan, or empty from your palette, like the dried color on the palette, because it's quite harsh on the hair of the brush when you pick up the color to mix it. So generally with the tubes, the paint is softer. So if you use your good brush to pick up the paint from the side while it's still soft, then it's not that bad. But I would advise you to always use an old brush. Some people have also asked me if there is a difference in color from, like, let's say Winsor yellow in the tube and Winsor yellow in the pan. And there isn't. They are exactly the same. I mean, certain makes just use exactly the same paint and put some in there and some in here, but these are dried differently. So the Winsor & Newton ones, I think they dry them outside of the little plastic container, and then they put them in there once they dry. But it's the same color. So the tubes may look a little bit stronger because you have so much more paint available that you can get a bigger and stronger pool of paint much quicker, as I showed you before, like instead of going back and forth. So, but the paint is absolutely the same strength, same pigments. Okay, so just to summarize, pans are good for plein air, and then if you don't need a huge amount of color mixing like you do in botanical painting, and they're good for traveling. And tubes are good when you want to have loads of paints readily available. You make big pools of paint, and also for information about the color. So these are the main differences, pros and cons. And I don't know if you have a favorite, or if you're still struggling to decide. You could try a bit of both. So you could try some watercolor pans, and some buy the tubes, and then you could try buy the tubes and pour some into the pans. But it's a matter of preference, and I think it's a matter of just experimenting and see what really works for you. Okay, so I hope this little video helped, and if you have any comments, questions, just leave them below, and I'll try to answer you as soon as I can. Okay, thank you.